All right. Good morning, good afternoon to some of you. And this is Vinicius David from Birdie AI. So we're about to start another masterclass here. Today we have a special one, and our guest is hiding behind the scenes here. So wait until she pops up here, and I guarantee it's going to be one of the best sections we've ever had. So, but we're going to give our guest a few more minutes here before we kick off. So 12 o'clock. One more minute and we will get started. Let's see if we have. So welcome everyone here. All right. In 1 minute, we're going to get started here. Just giving one more minute for people to join us. Hi, Fernando. Thanks for joining us here. I see you online. All right. Without further ado, so once again, I'm Vinicius David. I'm in charge of growth at Birdie. So today I have a special guest. Her name is Sam Chandler, and she's the director of customer success at a company called Customer with a K. And before that, she will tell a lot of her stories here. She was for almost 10 years an executive at Zendesk, always managing customer success. And she started what I say a very active career by doing what she's actually teaching and leading and coaching today. And I'm not going to steal her thunder, but without further ado, Sam Chandler, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here. It's very exciting. Today, we're going to talk about influence. And like Vinny said, I'm Sam. It's nice to meet you. Yeah.
Likewise.
Just kidding, y'all. Just kidding. This is Sam.
I was going to say, where's that energy? Like, I'm going to tell a little story here, right? Like, I'm guilty. So when I met her for the first time, it was in this event in Austin, and I'm guilty. I was on my phone, right? It's like, and she was actively presenting, and then I said, "Oh, let me stop here. Like, what energy this lady has? She could beat the phone, which is something very hard these days. But without saying anything else, so Sam, thank you so much for joining us here, and look forward to the conversation and masterclass.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, as you mentioned today, we're going to talk about influence. But yeah, this first slide, I know it's so riveting, isn't it? It just pops off the screen. But we laugh about it. But think about how many of our colleagues and maybe ourselves have this exact same personal brand. It's generic. There's a fuzzy picture that is cut off of God knows what. There's background behind it. And these are the same folks that are wondering why they can't get executive buy-in. Nobody's listening to them. Nobody's giving them budget. Nobody's taking their team members. Too many people are taking their team members. Everything's happening to them, and they're just in this little box. And it's also interesting because when I ask these same folks with these same very generic portraits of themselves, I'm like, okay, well, this really cool idea you had, why don't you post that on LinkedIn? These are the same folks that look at me like I am the craziest person in the whole world, that I would even imagine that they would be able to do something like that. And what I realized throughout my time, both in customer service and just in leadership in general, is we as a society, we have these boxes, we have these imaginary lines, and it's good sometimes because it keeps us from just descending into chaos, which is really nice. I'm a big advocate of not descending into chaos. But on the flip side, it makes us think that we can't do anything more than that. And if you don't take away anything else from what I say today, I hope that of everything, you remember that you can just give those little imaginary lines a little push. None of this is real. All of this is made up. So why not just push the boundaries just a little? Don't go robbing banks. Don't do anything illegal, but just push a little bit. And what you will find is that there really was no spoon all along. You can play around with these lines. You can be whatever you decide that you want to be. And again, if you don't take away anything else that we talk about today, I need you to remember that the only difference between yourself and me is that I am off of mute and I'm showing my face. That's literally it. That is literally it. So with that, I always like to remind people of that because this is what we're going to talk about today. In order to gain influence, you have to be influential. So we're going to talk about your personal brand, why it is important, and hopefully next time somebody asks you to post something on LinkedIn, you won't think it's the craziest thing in the whole world. Then we're going to talk about how you can actually do that, just a couple of steps that you can take literally right now after this session and immediately have a huge impact. And then most importantly, we're going to talk about what you do with that influence after you get it, but the right way, not the wrong way. So basically how you can challenge conventional wisdom and get that executive buy-in that you were looking for. So it's all a process, very excited. But yeah, don't be afraid to go off mute in your life. I guess there is no spoon. So first things first, let's talk about why it is important that you think about these things in your personal brand. I always like to start with this question, and feel free to add in the comments. Are you an expert? I just want to hear, throw something in the comments. Tell me if you're an expert. Ask, and yes or no, why do you think that? And let's see, I'll see if I can see them. If not, then I'll pretend that I saw them and we'll keep it moving. But yeah, ask yourself, are you an expert? I ask a lot of people this question, and it's usually around the time that I'm like, oh, that was a really cool thing you said. You should like share that with people. And they're like, how dare you? No, I could never. But I wanna just point out, this is, first off, everyone here is an expert. If you are on this session, you are an expert. And you know how I know that? Because at one point, somebody, either right now or at some point in history, has paid you for your knowledge. That is why we all have jobs, is to get paid in transaction for our knowledge. And if you cannot consider yourself an expert, then why should we? And you should always remember that. If you cannot consider yourself an expert, no one else will either. And what's really interesting, I talked to a lot of folks with imposter syndrome, and I'm sure that was probably exactly Fernando. Yes, that knows more than average. And Fernando, that's a perfect segue. I didn't even plant him in here to say that. But how many of us have had imposter syndrome? Literally, it always comes up. And it doesn't matter who I'm leading, who I'm working with, who I'm talking to. Just know that everyone around you has imposter syndrome. And I want to remind you that that actually proves that you know what you're talking about because of a little thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And that is basically where individuals who know a lot about a topic think that they know very little about a topic. And inversely, somebody that knows very little about something actually thinks that they know a whole lot. So the fact that you have imposter syndrome should tell you that you actually know a lot about a topic. Otherwise, you would not be afflicted with imposter syndrome. Keep that in the back of your brain and remember that Sam Chandler told you that imposter syndrome means you actually know what's going on. And one of the best ways to overcome imposter syndrome is to work on your personal brand. And a lot of times this happens when people want to get a job, or they start out, posting a lot of things, or they start kind of like thinking about their brand, and then it just kind of pitters away. They lose time, they get busy, and then they just kind of forget about it until it's time for the next job search. And the other thing that's really funny is that they want it to happen immediately. And so they think, I'm going to post 4 LinkedIn posts, and I'm going to post a video on TikTok, and therefore I will get a job in 60 seconds, the end. I wish that were true. I also wish that were true with the gym. If I went to the gym one time and did like 1 rep, and then I was done, wouldn't that be so cool? Oh, that would be great. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's something that you have to continuously cultivate. So one thing that I like to kind of compare this to is if you are in a customer-facing role, like customer success specifically, but really any type of support, CX, account management, think about the relationships that you have to cultivate continuously. It's the exact same process. You are already in that role because you're good at it. So think about doing that, except with the whole world. You're now the Lady Gaga of trying to get everybody to build a relationship with you. And you're going to hear me say this a lot. Consistency is key here. It is so key. You have to continuously do this. Okay, but I made that sound very easy, and it basically is, but why does everyone not do this? 1, because they're terrified of actually being noticed. It's kind of the irony of wanting influence and executive buy-in. 2, they're unaware that they actually know things, just like we talked about. But then 3, again, lack of consistency. People will start out really excited and heavy with this, and then it'll just kind of peter out and they forget about it. So it's kind of kinetic energy. You got to keep it going. And it's a flywheel. And that's the thing that is really exciting about kind of starting this when you feel those pangs of imposter syndrome, is that you realize, hey, wait a second, like I'm getting a little look here. Okay, cool. And then you can keep it going, and it'll actually kind of cure your imposter syndrome a little bit. And this is what I like to remind people. The good news is that if you don't decide to work in your personal brand, it's okay. You don't get thrown in jail. Nobody will arrest you. It's fine. Nothing will happen to you. However, if you don't work on your personal brand, nothing will happen to you. So keep that in mind. This is your ability, but also responsibility. There is no spoon. You gotta make those things happen. Push those lines. So now that we've talked about why you need to and why it's so important, we're gonna go over just a few little things that are very, very easy that are going to immediately make a huge difference in your personal brand. So the first thing is actually having methodologies. And that sounds very fancy, doesn't it? Oh, this is my methodology. This is my philosophy on this. And it is. It's a very fancy word for a very basic thing that all of you are already doing. This is about making sure that you have thoughts, opinions on topics, on ways of doing things. And this is where I really try to encourage people to separate yourself from your current role. Yes, logos are important. Yes, that can help catapult your personal brand. It doesn't hurt most of the time, but your personal brand is about literally you. So if you do not have opinions on these things, if you don't have vibes on anything, then you can't, then it's difficult to build a methodology around your personal brand. So what I would encourage you to do is think about what differentiates you from anybody else in the market and start working on an opinion in that way. Separate from your company, separate, unless you own your own company, separate from all of that. This is just about you. And again, when I ask people what their philosophies are, they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't have anything. Yes, you do. My favorite place to start is with the old decks, presentation decks, Google Slides. Get those things out. You will start to see all of these really cool things that you said, either externally to a customer or internally. That is an opinion. That is a stance on something. Also, think about answers that you've given on job interviews. Can you imagine if you went to a job interview and they asked you a question and then you're like, oh, I don't have an opinion on that. You wouldn't do very well. So think of all of these places where you are asked for your opinion, and then just be very forward with those opinions. Start phrasing it like, this is how I do it. Or, you know what, when I've worked on this type of thing, or the types of companies I've worked with, this is how it all came together. Or this is what I'm seeing in the market. Oh, that's a good one. This is what I'm seeing in the market. It just immediately elevates everything that you're saying. But yeah, just think about all of the things that people have come to you and asked about, whether that is an internal process, whether that is something with the product for the company that you work for. All of these things are valuable pieces of knowledge that someone out there in the market really wants you to share. And if you can't think of anything in your repertoire of old work, here are my 4 pillars of knowledge. And doesn't that sound fancy? But this is just a methodology that I realized I was repeatedly doing as I was hiring people. That's how it starts. Isn't that cool? So for me, I think back to 4 things. Any role that you will have knowledge of your industry, knowledge of your product or company, knowledge of the role that you're in. So like CSM, AE, things like that. And then knowledge of the segment that you're working. And that can be as large or as small as you want. For example, enterprise versus startup, or, government work versus supply chain. All of those things are very, very important. And when you couple them together, amazingly enough, you realize you actually do have a stance on things. So play around with those. I know y'all have opinions because I hear them all the time. The next thing that you want to do is legitimize your portfolio. And again, portfolio is a very fancy word, but really all it is just a collection of your work. The easiest place to do this is on LinkedIn. There are literally over 1 billion people on LinkedIn. It is the largest professional network, and yet only about 1% of those people actually post content actively. So all it takes to be like a rock star on LinkedIn is a pulse and just a little bit of a personality. And I swear, you are Kim Kardashian of LinkedIn. So it's an easy place to start. It's a free place to start. They should pay me to say that. They don't, but try it out. And then that's where you can start putting together these philosophies, these methodologies, and start putting your portfolio together. It's not a resume. It is a collection of your work that shows your opinion. And if you can't find opportunities to share your perspectives, you can just create your own. And again, there's a flywheel that happens once you start posting these things. So here's an example. This is an old deck that I made. I don't remember what I was doing it for. It was something with the ZenS for Startups program. Doesn't it sound super fancy though when I say, well, this is the Startups Best Practices Guide on AI and CX? I literally just changed the title, and then I made it kind of more open and generic for all startups. And now it's on my LinkedIn featured section. Highly recommend, go and do that right now. You already have the content. And then the next thing that will make the biggest difference is literally just getting a press packet together. And again, fancy words for a grouping of photos for your profile picture. Please stop using the picture that you cut like your bridal shower group out of, and it's super fuzzy and blurry. You can do better than that. The pictures that I have up at the top, I literally took those in my house. One of them is against my bedroom wall. The other one is against my living room wall. Play around with props. You see here, there's a microphone. Think about what it is that you do and what you want to show about your personality. The unicorn one was when I was working exclusively with startups, and it's just a really fun photo. And then, if you want to get more professional, you've got like a little thing that you can do there. And then think about like colors and coordinating your colors and what your brand photos are. I will tell you, this was like one of the most fun things that I ever did. Like just going and playing around, seeing the photos, giving yourself options. It just makes you feel more important. So highly, highly recommend doing that. But then also think about all of the events that you've gone to. So Vinny was just talking about the support driven event. One thing I love about any event that Scott does is that he goes and he takes photos. Take advantage of that. Now you have action shots that make you look very important, like you're going and you're consulting people. Make sure people take pictures of you on stage. If you haven't been on stage, go in front of a stage and look like you're giving a presentation, and then boom, no one will ever question it. So make sure that you have all of these things together. And then also at least a short bio about yourself. Google how to create a bio. You will find things right there. But this step is so, so, so important to making you feel like you belong in the room. Okay, so lastly, now that we've got all of that, now what we want to do is take all of the amazing influence that you just built up and you're going to leverage it, but in the right way. It gets things done. The first thing is you want to start creating that flywheel. I always start with giving and not asking. And I'm not even talking about executives. I'm talking about everyone. So we know the concept of brand awareness versus brand equity. Awareness is people knowing about your brand. Equity is the value that people place on it. It's the same thing with personal branding. Now that you have awareness, people know who you are because you got cool headshots. Now you want to start working that into the value that people place on the knowledge and the wisdom and the humor and the irreverence that you are bringing to the table. So that is where collaborate with everyone, whether it's CX, whether it's sales, product, someone in a completely different industry, collaborate with as many people as you can. Share your philosophies. I love to do this online, but also within my company, because people forget that that is just another network of folks that can take in your content. And then again, also be consistent. That is the most important part, consistent. And so when I think about that and then challenging conventional wisdom, the thing that I like to ask is, are we trying to challenge conventional wisdom, or are we just trying to get more influence in the room that we're in, more responsibility? There's two different things. Those are two different motivations. Both are completely fine. But really think about it, because one is going to take a little bit more work than the other one. For example, my mission in life is to change the way that we think about customer success. That is a long-term goal. There's going to be a lot of pieces of that puzzle that I got to put together. That is so different than trying to get my executive team or my peer leadership team to adopt a tool. Like those are two different things. So really think about what you are actually trying to do. Is this a new concept, or are you just taking an old concept and trying to execute it in a new way? Are you trying to measure ROI in a different way? Or are you trying to get to a better impact on a metric using a different execution? Like all kinds of different things. Number 3 is also a super important element that I like to think about. Are you asking for permission to execute a plan, or do you have a theory that you need room to experiment on? Again, two different things require two different levels of trust, but really think about what you're asking instead of just spewing things out into the world. And then also think about who it is you need to convince and what the roadblocks are. So it's not always going to be an executive team. Sometimes it's your peers. Sometimes it's your team that you lead. Sometimes it's people in the industry. Just think about that and then plan accordingly. And then if it is executives, again, don't ask, give. You want to have built a reputation, a brand equity that literally precedes you before you go into a room. And I will tell you, executives are paying attention, at least the good ones are. So it's not even just executives that you need to be talking to. Sharing, being visible, being useful. I got that from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Be useful, whatever you do. But this is not just about for the executives. It's also for your industries and your peers in the industry, but then also your colleagues at work. The executives are paying attention to who is helping out who. Trust me. I've had several examples, and I'm like, Sir, I didn't even know you saw me. Okay, now I know who you are. Okay, great. So just think about that as you are determining like who to share this with. These are always things that you have knowledge that people want, and just make sure you're just doing it a little loudly. Also, too, like hopefully these concepts are starting to kind of sink in. It's really the same thing. It's consistency, sharing, being visible. That's really it. But with executives and executive buy-in, uh, this is my map for executive buy-in. This is as straight as line as you're gonna get there. But yeah, like these are the things that you should be asking yourself. One, what are you actually asking for? But also, where's your data, which we're going to get to in a minute. Thirdly, how much time do you have to prove your point? And again, think about with executives, the time frame is going to be longer. So they've got a million things going on. They usually see at least 12 to 18 months into the future. Hopefully they're not chasing shiny objects. They don't need you to throw another shiny object at them. And so this is something that, again, through repetition and consistency, you're going to need to keep putting in front of them. So you need to make sure that you have enough time built out in order to do that. Lastly, you're going to want to follow the money. So it's great if you know the CX metrics that this impacts, but you need to know how this is impacting revenue or churn or contraction or operational efficiency. Think about how what you are doing is going to impact the bottom line for the whole company. And lastly, just know that at the end of this, you can put together a really compelling and beautiful argument consistently for the next 18 months and still get a no. So you need to figure out what you're going to do with those emotions. Is it, I'm going to leave and go find somebody that will listen to me? Sometimes I've done that. Is it, you know what? Okay, back to the drawing board. We need more data. Sometimes I've done that. Is it just sitting and pouting and then moving on? Yeah, sometimes you've done that. You have to remember that executives, even CCOs, are thinking holistically about the entire company. So even CCOs cannot just make decisions based on their own group of folks. They have to think about how it will impact the entire company. And what's really interesting with that, this is why I'm so obsessed with Birdie right now. One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard for how you get executive buy-in is that when you show them you're right, suddenly you don't have to convince them anymore. And what I love about Birdie is that you now have so many data points at your disposal that you can leverage to show that you're right. So in CX, I don't know about you all, but usually it's like you start with a feeling. Like good support managers start with a feeling. Great ones put data in there. And so this is one of those things that I used to take forever to pull together all these pieces of information, and then you didn't even really know kind of how to compile it. And so again, just the ethos of Birdie to not only put that together, but to celebrate the fact that, like, yes, we can have a data hypothesis. You can be a trailblazer and do these unconventional things so that they then become the norm. So Vinny, thank you. I love that about you all. And then, yeah, lastly, I have this resource. Feel free. There's a link right there. And then there's also a QR code. This is just my 5 LinkedIn non-negotiables. So it's a simple 5-step process to grabbing a little bit of pizzazz on LinkedIn and making sure that you are getting noticed and that people are like, oh, dang, fancy. Super easy things. And then, yeah, I'm easy to find. Feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, and then I think we have time for questions, Q&A, right? I haven't been looking at the comments. Have people been saying nice things?
Well, we keep on here. This has been amazing, Sam, and once again, thank you so much for putting the effort and your energy and enthusiasm. It's always contagious. So we have a question here for people doing some job searching. Sometimes it's hard not to intensify your imposter syndrome. Like, what techniques or advice would you give for it to remain confident when you are needing to influence the most?
Well, I will tell you, Mr. and Mrs. LinkedIn user, you have no idea how much I connect with this. Yeah. So what's really interesting is the pictures that I was showing you. I took those, I think it was about a year ago now, maybe a year and a half ago. And I was feeling like I had no idea what I was doing, to the point that I was like, you know what? Maybe I just don't know. Maybe I have no idea. It was because folks around me were not cultivating that in the way that and they should have. I didn't have great leaders around me. And so it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I will tell you, I was like, you know what? That's really what set me on this journey of like, no, this is my personal brand. I had like a kind of a local personal brand, but then I was like, no, let's just try this out. Let's see if I know what I'm talking about. And that's when I took pictures, and that kind of like boosted me a little bit. And then I started engaging with folks through content and things like that. And I will tell you, when you keep getting rejections, it sucks. It really, really sucks. I'm not going to lie to you. You can say that it sucks for a whole year. That's fine. Like, but at a certain point, you got to believe in yourself. And if you can't believe in yourself, then it's, like I said, it's going to be very difficult for other folks to believe that you're an expert. So that's where you go, you flip it on your head. Don't let somebody else define that for you. You define that for yourself. And then you get out there and you show them. You show them. And if you need any help, you come find me. Ooh, I see boys club mentality. Oh, Rebecca, I'm reading this now. How do you handle a boys club mentality where they just don't want to hear ideas from a woman / someone who is not a man? Again, I've been there too. The thing that I do is sometimes I forget I'm a girl, and I go and I say the things and I don't care. My other favorite thing, Rebecca, I will tell you, listen, disrespect is a gift. So it is one of my favorite things to be to be disregarded, because I know that I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, and I'm going to do it better. So unfortunately, like what I would say, you got to be better. Just be better. Know you're better. And if you can't get buy-in in the group that you're in, get buy-in above. Get buy-in wherever. Get buy-in from everybody around that boys club until everybody else is like, oh my God, who's Rebecca? Who is that? And then they have to. Then they gotta listen. And that's the best revenge. Again, if you want to talk more about this, like come find me and we can swap stories. But yeah, disrespect to gifts.
All right, keep on posting questions. We have more time here. Let me ask you a question, Sam.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about data to become a more effective influencer, right? Inside or outside of your company. And let me put this way: for many people, influencing is not a natural thing. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're in CX, you're representing a customer. If you're in CS, that's the skill you probably need the most. But at the same time, people need time to invest and upskill. Yep. But at the same time, right? So they have a ton of manual work left, consolidating data, right? Like chasing the data is hard.
It's hard.
Like getting the right information from that data. I mean, like what advice would you give to people who are, I'd say, flooded with data and don't know what to do in order to save time to go and invest in themselves to become more influential?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's about tests. It's about tinier tests to prove a concept. And so if you can't get the buy-in to go get a cool, awesome tool like Birdie, then take the manual time to do a little test with whatever amount of time and effort that you can pull together. So like you were telling me a story about how you started on the shop floor, and you were literally taking, I believe you said, a piece of paper, right? And you were doing it. That's how
for like 7 people. So
yeah, exactly. That I will tell you, back when I started as a customer service manager, I would do the same thing with CSAT, with customer satisfaction. I would literally mark out like where the categories were because I didn't have anything else. And so I needed to be able to group that together to better understand what is the general idea. And then when I became a CSM, I literally did the same thing. I would work with the customer and say, okay, let's map out and understand why people are liking your product or hating your product or your service. And so once I mean, that's honestly one of my favorite things about AI is that you can do that so much more easily. So I would say as big of a test as you can do, just something that you can attach data to and show executives this is what we're experiencing, but then also showing them this is how much time this took me to do. If I had an awesome tool, then I could reduce the amount of time and outsize the impact of the cost there. So that would be what I would recommend. Always show the data, and I will, especially with a little PowerPoint or a Google slide, you put a visual in there, like you blow people's minds. Have you found that too?
And it goes back to your point about the return of the investment, right? Like showing I'd say the loss of of time by doing a lot of manual work. It's in investing in technology to reduce that workload. It's an ROI for the company. Showing how technology can better influence P&L decisions, it's another one, right? But like, I think it starts with yourself. Like, hey,
it absolutely does.
Like, you're paying me like X $1,000 a year, and maybe let's say 70% of that is going through the roof.
Exactly.
More because like we're wasting our time, right? It's like
I also like to do that with executive salaries and just remind them like, and your time in here is super valuable, and look how much time we're spending towards that. Another kind of connected to that, one of my favorite COOs, Tom Kaiser, shout out. Somebody tell him I shouted him out, okay? But I remember when I worked with him at Zendesk, one of the most influential things that he did for us was made us recognize the customer pain that we were inflicting. So back in the day, like we had some uptime issues, and the non-customer facing teams were like, but we're still hitting our metric. This is fine. Like we're still hitting our SLA, no big deal. I think it was like 97% uptime, something like that. And so what he did so wonderfully was break out those little few percentage points and show the actual impact to our customers from that. And so what I always encourage people to do, don't just sit on vanity metrics. CSAT by itself is not a big deal. Whether you go from a 94 to a 97 in CSAT, not really a big deal if it's not carrying the revenue, the time savings, the operational efficiencies with it. So again, thinking through, we're CX folks here. We think in terms of the customer and a customer-centric world. Really, truly put yourself in their shoes and walk the customer journey and say, how painful is this? Like, is this a big deal or is this like a small one? And you will probably find if you really break out those vanity metrics, that there's a lot of pain that your customers are absorbing for your inefficiencies in operation.
Talking about those, what's your view on NPS before I share a little bit about mine? NPS. How modern, how useful is NPS in the era of AI, for example?
I will tell you, how many people do you think are just like twitching as they're like typing right now? Fernando, I'm sure you are. But yeah, so it's a debate. It's a debate. Sometimes I like to think of NPS as a proxy, quite frankly. And again, if you don't know the difference between CSAT and NPS, it's okay. Go Google it, but just know that there are very different measurements. I like to think of NPS as a proxy for reasons that people do not stay with your product. It doesn't always measure out that way, but it's a great way it's a great lens to start thinking about why, like, if somebody gives this NPS score or if somebody gives this CSAT score, are they going to leave or are they just annoyed? And again, that takes data to figure out, but all of these things are important together in an orchestra, but not so much if you just look at a number by itself. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm very biased towards the limitation of NPS, Sam, because I think it worked well in a world that was not as dynamic as the one we live today, right? Like, and I think the point is, bad NPS scores, they tell something,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of important things hidden behind good NPS. Like, customers not leaving you today because they are unhappy. Customers are leaving happy because
Mm-hmm.
they have more choices now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's think about the auto industry. How many new auto companies were created from the 20s to the
There you go.
2000s? Like zero.
Mm-hmm.
How many new auto companies were created during the past 15 years? Like hundreds
Mm-hmm.
globally. Like,
Mm-hmm.
things are getting changing. Like, things are changing so dramatically. Like, people who were buying a Ford before, not necessarily they went to a Tesla Cybertruck because they were unhappy with their F-150. They
Mm-hmm.
just found something else. And
Yep.
NPS is not going to tell why your customers are about to leave or not, right? Like, to me, that's why it's so limited. Like, and
Yeah, I would
the other
agree.
the other problem is it's a static one, right? So you rely on
Yeah.
a data point that is just not looking at the whole experience and the
Mm-hmm.
journey. And again, I mean, real-time data is there available. Like, before, we didn't
Mm-hmm.
have technology to harvest real-time data and convert that into information quickly. Now we do, right?
Yeah,
Why
you
would
do.
we wait for something that happened in the past somewhere when to
Yeah.
make a decision today? Too risky.
And you made a really good point about real-time data because I remember almost 10 years ago now, around circa 2016, 2017, I remember customers being like, I need real-time data. And I was a CSM at the time, and I'm like, do you really? The answer was no. However, now we actually have applications that we can leverage real-time data for. Before, it was something that I think was fancy sounding, and CX leaders just wanted it. But now, to your point, we actually have things we can do with it. And actually, I think it's a good segue. I saw Justin asked a question.
Justin, there we
Uh,
go.
yeah, I'm curious to hear how you approach building customer experience strategy. What approaches have worked best for you, Justin? I'm going to tell you a story about a man you may or may not have heard of called Walt Disney. My favorite customer journey mapping story, is with Walt Disney, and this is a true story. So when he was building Walt Disney World theme parks, he started at the front gate and he had a bag of popcorn and he started walking and eating the bag of popcorn. And then when he was done with the popcorn, he stopped and he said, we need a trash can right here. And to this day, true story, the distance between trash cans at Walt Disney World theme parks was how long it took Walt Disney to finish a bag of popcorn. And I love this story because, to me, it's literally walking in your customer's shoes. So what I would recommend is thinking through what is the journey today and what is the ideal journey. So I like to break it kind of out into two different segments of customer, because you're going to have the new customers that are coming in. You don't want less customers. That's not the goal. So you want them to experience like what you want the right journey to be. But then you also have a group of customers that did not have that journey. So where are you going to go and think through their pain points and then start remedying those? So that's what I'd say. And for what it's worth, it's what I'm doing right now. I'm building out the commercial customer success organization, the motion there, and it's a radically different approach. But we still think about that journey and where are the pain points, where are our customers going to need help, but not necessarily a meeting or time with us, because that's not also what they want either, not always. So where can we use data? Where can we use efficiencies, and just make sure that we get them what they need when they need it, and value their time and make them feel like we love them even though we're not talking to them. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to nerd out about that more.
So we're approaching the end here. Um, what advice would you give to someone starting in CX or CS today in this era of AI? What jobs are left for humanity that only humans can be great at and not compete head to head with the machine?
Yeah, such a great question. What's funny is like I remember 2 or 3 years ago talking to CX leaders, executives, and I'm like, what's your take on AI? And they're like, we have no use for it. And now fast forward to today, everybody's like, how do we get this into our journeys? And what I would say is understanding where AI can fit into your customer journey. So there's so much more to AI than just bots. We literally just talked about leveraging it for reporting and for kind of enriching the customer experience through that, not through bots. If anybody that I talk to that's transitioning into this world of CX, I don't like to start with this is what you need to know about AI, because quite frankly, AI is a tool. If we start thinking of it like that, then we start creating problems that didn't really exist. But if we think about how can we leverage AI, like we've been talking about, to make our lives easier and all of these things that we had to do manually, how to make them faster and get better responses real time, I mean, that's amazing. So I would always encourage somebody, think through, gather as much knowledge of the landscape right now. What's going on? What problems are huge? Honestly, this is a really great opportunity too to like go tap into like executive type folks or leaders and build your personal brand and say, hey, I'm researching this. I'm really interested in transitioning into this world. Like, what keeps you up at night? What are your main things right now? And just hear them out, and then gather an opinion, your philosophy, your methodology on it, and then think through, is this something that AI can solve?
This is great. Sam, where did you grow up?
I was born in Oklahoma City. And then I've lived in Atlanta for, I guess, most of my life now. So I don't know. Where does that mean? Where is anybody from anymore? I ask myself that a lot.
Right. So, and the question that I always love to ask that I hear all the time is you talked about your purpose of life, but if I can gift you like a billboard in your hometown or the street you were born and raised, in 10 years from now, what would you love to write there?
Oh my gosh. First off, we didn't plan this question, so just know that what I'm about to say is like
I told you that I
off
was
the
going
top
to
of my
ask
head.
you off script.
It's a really good question. It would honestly, it would be something ridiculous and irreverent. Um, honestly, it would probably be like a Parks and Rec quote. Or just like some weird picture of me doing something weird, which is not really helpful at all, but hopefully entertaining. So, so then what I would probably do is like put some kind of weird QR code back there to like get people into whatever it was that I was trying to get them into. But yeah, it would be something like that, and I would just think about like how funny it would be to watch people like go back past this billboard that made no sense to them, and I'm just like laughing hysterically.
And the good thing about the QR code, it can always change your mind, right? It's like
Exactly.
they're
Forward it
right
something
behind the QR
else.
code, as long as they know what that is. So,
Yeah. So anyway, was that the weirdest answer you've gotten to that question?
well, it was the most creative, I'd say.
My
Nobody
teachers used to say that too.
said like, okay, no, I picture can paint 1,000 words. I'll take
There
it.
you go. There you
Take it. I'll take it. Sam, this was excellent. So let me say a big thank you again. Thank you everyone for the great questions here. So we're gonna do more of these, and we could spend the whole day here talking about these things. And once again, your passion, your energy, your commitment to leadership, it stands out. So this was great experience for me as well, and I've learned a ton.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. It's an honor to get to talk to amazing folks like you, like Birdie, like everybody that joined us. So thank you for just having me.
All right, and to the next one. And